Back in the 2022 to 2023 school year, I was in my senior year at Bayshore High in Long Island, New York. Honestly, life was pretty good at the time. My grades were solid, I'd gotten into a few of my top choice colleges, and it felt like my future was finally taking shape. But there was this weird emotional tug of war going on inside me. I was excited to move forward, sure, but there was this heavy sadness too, the kind that hits when you realize a big chapter of your life is ending. It's hard to explain, but it's like you're standing at the edge of something new, and all you can think about is everything you're about to leave behind. My friends, my favorite teachers, even the creaky old lockers I'd passed a million times, it all felt weirdly precious. It was November, and the weeks were flying by faster than I wanted. Thanksgiving break was just around the corner, and while most people were pumped, I couldn't shake this creeping anxiety. Little did I know that anxiety was nothing compared to what was coming. It happened on a regular run-of-the-mill school day. Lunch had just ended, and I was headed to sixth period. The class itself was unremarkable. Just another 50 minutes of zoning in and out, trying to stay awake. About 15 minutes in, I realized I'd made a rookie mistake at lunch. I drank way too much water. My bladder wasn't going to wait for the bell, so I raised my hand, got a pass, and headed to the restroom. The bathroom was empty, just the usual tile floors, graffiti-tagged stalls, and flickering fluorescent lights. I picked a stall, did my business, and was just about to leave when something felt off. You ever get that prickly feeling like someone's watching you? That's what it was, a weird, instinctual unease. I glanced around the stall, my eyes darting to the corners of the ceiling, and then I saw it. A tiny black camera. It was barely noticeable, wedged up high in the corner, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. My stomach dropped, like I just missed a step on the stairs. I froze, staring at that little device, my brain trying to make sense of it. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't think. And then, like a switch flipped, I bolted. I didn't wash my hands, didn't even pause to look back. I just ran straight to the principal's office. I practically burst through the door, out of breath, and started babbling to the secretary. Words were spilling out of me faster than she could process. Something about a camera, the stall, how it was aimed right at me. At first, she just blinked, probably trying to figure out if I was pranking her. But then she saw the tears in my eyes, the way my hands were shaking, and her expression shifted. Within minutes, the principal, Mrs. Whitman, was on the move. She grabbed a ladder from the janitor's closet, and we went straight to the bathroom. She was trying to keep it together, but I could tell she was just as shaken as I was. When we got there, she looked up, and her face went pale. The camera was exactly where I'd said it was. She climbed up, removed the device, and told me she was calling the police. Then she turned to me and said I could leave school early if I wanted to. I didn't hesitate. I just grabbed my stuff and left. When I got home, I told my parents everything. They were horrified. My mom kept shaking her head, muttering under her breath, and my dad looked like he was ready to punch a wall. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was that camera staring back at me. A week later, the truth came out. The guy behind it, Daniel Carter, he'd graduated the year before and had been helping out with the drama club. I didn't know him personally, but I'd seen him around a few times. Apparently, he'd snuck into the bathroom early one morning and set up the camera. When I found out, I felt sick. This wasn't some random stranger. This was someone who had walked the same halls as us, someone who was supposed to be one of us. Daniel was arrested, but when he went to court, he pled not guilty. Can you imagine? Not guilty. Like this was all just some kind of mix-up. It turned out I wasn't the only victim. Another girl had been recorded, and she was just as shaken as I was. We both filed restraining orders against him, but it didn't feel like enough. The worst part of the whole thing wasn't even the camera or the betrayal. It was the aftermath. You'd think getting him arrested would bring some kind of closure, but it didn't. Every time I walked into a bathroom, I found myself looking up, scanning the ceiling for another hidden camera. Every time I was alone, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. 2 years have passed since then. I'm in college now, trying to live my life, make new friends, and focus on my future. On the surface, things seem fine. But deep down, that fear is still there. Sometimes I catch myself glancing at the corners of the ceiling in public restrooms, half expecting to see another camera. Maybe it's just my mind's way of protecting me, making sure I'm never caught off guard again. Or maybe, just maybe, Daniel wasn't the only one. And that thought, that's the one that keeps me awake at night. Looking back, I wonder if things would have been different if I hadn't gone to Bayshore High. Maybe. But that's a question I'll never really have the answer to. This all went down back when I was in 3rd grade. It was the second Friday of the school year, and I'd been having an amazing couple of weeks. I got to hang out with my friends again, and my teachers were just as awesome as everyone said they'd be. Seriously, before school started, people kept telling me I was about to have the best teachers ever, and they weren't wrong. We hadn't even gotten homework yet since we were still settling into the new year. Fridays were usually my favorite day. After school, my friends and I would head to Dave & Buster's in town, and it was the perfect start to the weekend. But this Friday turned out to be the worst one of my life, and I didn't even make it to Dave & Buster's. It was 11 a.m., about an hour before lunch. I'd been looking forward to lunch all morning because Fridays meant pizza day. I was heading into 3rd period, and about 20 minutes into class, I asked my teacher if I could use the bathroom. She handed me the hall pass, and off I went. The bathroom was empty when I got there. I went into a stall because, well, nature called. Once I was done, I washed my hands and went to grab a paper towel when I heard the school lockdown alarm. It beeped 4 times. I knew enough to realize this wasn't a drill. 3 beeps would have meant a drill. Even though I was just a kid, I understood what I had to do. I shut off the bathroom lights, went back into the stall I'd just used, closed the lid on the toilet, and crouched down on top of it. My heart was pounding. There was no way I could run back to class without risking everyone's safety. 10 minutes passed, and I was shaking with fear. Tears started falling, but I tried to cry as quietly as I could. Then I heard footsteps. Someone was coming into the bathroom. The door creaked open, and light from the hallway spilled in. The footsteps got closer, stopping right in front of my stall. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I held my breath but ended up covering my mouth with my hands to make sure I stayed silent. After what felt like forever, probably 15 or 20 seconds, the footsteps turned and walked away. Whoever it was left the bathroom. I was so relieved, but I stayed frozen in place, too scared to move. The lockdown lasted another 15 minutes. I stayed crouched in that stall until I heard the faint sound of a scream, a man's scream. It was loud at first, but quickly faded. Then a minute later, the principal's voice came over the loudspeaker. "Elvis has left the building." That was our code for the lockdown being over. School ended early that day for obvious reasons. My mom picked me up about 15 minutes later, and I went straight home. The next day, she sat me down and told me what had happened. What she said chilled me to my core. Apparently, someone in the administration got a strange phone call. The caller mentioned a pizza delivery for the school. When they checked with the staff, no one had ordered pizza. The admin immediately alerted the principal, who decided to initiate the lockdown. While we were locked down, an intruder actually walked into the school. He tried every classroom door, but they were all locked, except for the bathroom I was in and one other classroom where the teacher had to barricade the door with a drawer. Unfortunately, the intruder managed to push past the barricade. He was holding a knife. The teacher in that room acted fast. She grabbed a pair of scissors from her desk and threw them at him like a dart. They stuck in his shoulder and he screamed. That's the scream I heard. Then he ran out of the building and drove off. The reason behind the attack was horrifying. This man had been dating the mom of a boy in our school. She cheated on him with his best friend, and he was so enraged that he wanted revenge by targeting her son. I didn't know the boy, and we never shared any classes, but the thought of what could have happened still haunts me. After the incident, the school shut down for the entire week. The boy and his mom moved away, and I never saw or heard from them again. To this day, I wonder how they're doing. I just hope they're safe and happy now. If there's one thing this taught me, it's how much pain betrayal can cause. Don't cheat on someone. It's not worth the heartache or the chaos it can create. Growing up, there was always one story that gave me chills. The tale of the abandoned school on the edge of town. Everyone called it Pinecrest Elementary, though it hadn't seen a single student since the late 80s. The story went that a fire gutted the gymnasium one night. Nobody got hurt, but the damage was enough for the town to decide the place wasn't worth saving. They slapped on some padlocks, boarded the windows, and let it rot. Still, the rumors never died. They grew. People swore the school had a life of its own, especially after dark. Neighbors said they'd hear the faint sound of kids laughing and running, as if the halls were full again. Others claimed they saw flickering lights in the windows, even though the electricity had been cut for decades. But the story that made my stomach twist was the one about room 104. Legend had it that if you got close enough on certain nights, you'd hear voices coming from inside that room. Not playful giggles or happy chatter, no. These voices were crying, whispering, even begging. Some blamed the ghosts of children who'd perished in the fire, even though there wasn't any record of that. Others believed something far darker had been lurking in that school all along, long before the fire. I didn't believe any of it. Not really. But curiosity has always been my downfall. I couldn't let the stories rest without proving them wrong, or right. So, one night, armed with nothing but my phone and a flashlight, I decided to see for myself. The school looked even more intimidating up close. Its walls were covered in vines, the windows shattered like jagged teeth, and the roof sagged as if the whole building was on the verge of collapse. The front doors were chained shut, but a broken window on the side made it easy to slip in. The moment I stepped inside, I regretted it. The air hit me like a punch, stale, heavy and sharp with the smell of mildew. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating graffiti-covered walls, overturned desks, and scraps of old posters clinging to the peeling paint. Every step I took echoed so loudly, I was sure someone, or something, would hear me. As I made my way down the hall, it got colder. Not the kind of cold that makes you shiver, but the kind that sinks into your bones and makes every nerve scream at you to leave. But I pressed on, convincing myself it was just my imagination. Eventually, I reached the end of the corridor, room 104. The door wasn't much to look at, just cracked wood and peeling paint. But standing in front of it, I felt like it was daring me to turn the knob. My hands were sweating, but I gripped the cold metal handle and pushed the door open. The room looked just like the others I'd passed. Desks were tipped over, chairs scattered, and the chalkboard was streaked with faint smudged lines. But there was something wrong. The air felt heavier here, like the walls were leaning in, trying to crush me. I stepped inside, the crunch of glass under my shoes echoing unnaturally loud. That's when I heard it, a whisper, so soft I almost missed it, a child's voice. I froze, my flashlight trembling in my hand. At first I told myself it was just the wind, or maybe the sound of my own breathing. But then it came again, clearer this time. A faint, fragile voice. Help us. My stomach dropped. My legs screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. Slowly, I turned my flashlight toward the corner where the voice had come from. The beam landed on nothing, just an empty wall. But then, the voice came again, closer now. Please, help us. The cold in the room was unbearable. My heart felt like it might burst out of my chest. And then I heard them. Not just one voice. Dozens. Whispering, sobbing, begging. We're still here. Please don't leave us. I stumbled backward, tripping over a broken chair and crashing to the floor. That's when I saw it. The chalkboard. Words had appeared where there had been nothing before. Faint, smudged letters scrawled across the surface. Leave us. That was all I needed. I scrambled to my feet and bolted, not caring how much noise I made. My only thought was getting out of that building before whatever was in that room decided to follow me. I didn't stop running until I was far away from that cursed place, my lungs burning and my heart pounding in my ears. I never went back to Pinecrest after that night. I didn't have to. I know what I heard. I know what I saw. Those voices, those children, are still trapped in that room, crying out for help no one can give. And the worst part? I don't think they'll ever find peace. Sometimes late at night I still hear them, whispering, begging, and I know I'll never forget their voices as long as I live. If you like these stories, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to listen to new stories from Mr. Fear every day. Thank you for watching.